In this video, I'll be breaking down the different one-on-one techniques that you need to know if you want to become a better goalkeeper. All of these techniques have different advantages and disadvantages, and I'm going to show you exactly how to perform them and when to use them. So let's go! The first technique is the smother technique. Some goalkeeping coaches like to call it the Superman technique, and for good reason as well. The smother technique is when we go down on our side and we slide forwards towards the ball to either block it or to intercept it. As goalkeepers, we want to be offensive, we want to be proactive, and the smother technique is perfect for that. This technique is typically performed at a high speed, where we sprint towards the ball and we throw our body in front of the striker's feet to either intercept or to block the ball. This is typically during through ball situations. However, the smother technique can also be very useful if one of their strikers managed to break away from your defenders. It can be a failed offside trap or just a perfectly timed through ball on their behalf. When we go out to intercept the ball, we want to have our hands safely and securely around the ball, with one hand behind the ball and one hand on top of the ball. We want to come at high speed, and it's typically performed like this. We slide towards the ball and we have our hands in front of our body. We use the ball to protect our head, and we gather the ball and hold safely onto the ball. And it looks something like this. As you can see, I have my hands securely on the ball. I have my head behind the ball to protect my face. When we use the smother technique to block the ball instead of intercept it, this could be a situation when a through ball comes into our box and we think that we can manage to intercept it, but we see as we're on our way that we can't get to the ball before the striker. Now we don't want to stop, but we want to use our stomach to go through the ball and not give the striker any other option, just to try and shoot, and he will most likely hit our body. Many strikers will try and chip the ball, and this is why we have this hand above our body. I'll show you how it looks like. So this is when we block the ball. You see? Now my hands are spread like this. The striker will most likely hit me here, and I come with a lot of force, I come with a lot of power to limit the striker's option. And I have this hand above my body if the striker should attempt to chip me. To sum up, the smothering technique is a really effective technique, especially during through ball situations, or if the striker takes a bad touch and we manage to get to the ball before the striker, or we manage to get close enough to block the ball and given no other option but to just shoot the ball into our bodies. The obvious disadvantages with the smothering technique is if our timing is not perfect, then we are too far away from the striker. If the striker manages to take a touch around us, we could potentially make a penalty. And also, the smothering technique is not especially good when the striker tries to chip us. Even though we try to have our hand above our body, this doesn't really cover the whole area. You will save many chip shots, but you obviously can't get them all. We can use the smothering technique wherever we want to inside the area, as long as we manage to get the perfect timing. Let's move on to our second one-on-one technique that we can use as goalkeepers, which is the spread save. The spread save is, as the title suggests, when we spread ourselves as much as we can to try and prevent that ball from going into the net. When we use the spread technique, it's very important that we get as close to the striker as possible to limit the scoring option. It requires a lot of flexibility. I'm no young goalkeeper today, so my flexibility is not the same as it used to be. I'm only good at going down on this side. As you can see, I don't get this leg as far down as I do with the other one. So you need to be training your flexibility, your mobility to use this technique. The spread technique is something we want to use in the center of the goal. Maybe if it's a deflection, it hits your defender and it suddenly falls to the striker, you want to rush out and just spread yourself as much as possible to prevent the striker from scoring. And make sure that the striker shoots, because if he doesn't shoot, you're fully committed, and if the striker decides to take a touch around you, you have no chance of saving the ball. The advantage with the spread technique, if you manage to get close enough, is that you cover a large area of the goal. The obvious disadvantages with the spread technique is you're fully committed, there's no way back. If you're not flexible enough, the spread technique is not as effective as it could have been, and you're very vulnerable to shots between your legs. Common mistakes that I see goalkeepers do when they're performing the spread technique is that they turn their bodies, and when we turn our bodies, you can see that I'm not really covering any other area than this with my sides and this with my legs. So if you turn your body, I'm not really covering much. You want to be fully committed, you want to be brave, you want to put your head down so you don't get the ball in your nose. If the striker should decide to blast it, but you get it onto your forehead and it doesn't hurt. The last thing you want to do is to turn your body and open up the goal, but I cover a lot more when I do this. So be brave, stand your ground, and use the spread save in the center of the goal where it can be really, really effective. So far, if you're getting anything out of this video, please like and subscribe to our channel, and let's move on to the next technique. So the third technique is the block save. Some goalkeeping coaches like to call it the K save. This is one of my personal favorites. The block save or the K save is when we go down and we're sitting on one knee and standing on one foot. This knee is bent in a 90-degree angle and we're standing on our foot. As you probably can see, we have our hands shaped like a K, and we're just trying to cover as much area with our feet and with our hands as possible. The block save is especially effective when we manage to get close to the striker. If I attempt to make the block save here, you can see the goal is gaping. I have no chance of saving the ball. However, if I manage to get really close to the striker, and as you can see now, and the striker has no option but to launch the ball towards my body. The block save is not as effective in the center of the goal, but it's really, really effective when we get to the side, because the goal is obviously not as big from the sides as it is from the center of the goal. And as the angle gets more and more narrow for the striker, the K save becomes more and more effective because we cover a lot of ground inside a narrow area. And if we manage to get close enough, there isn't really any space for the striker to shoot. The block save doesn't cover as much area as, for example, the spread save. However, we're much more in control. We're not as committed as we are when we perform the spread save. We still have time to react with our hands. If the striker tries to chip the ball, we can still use our hands to try and block the attempt. And we're not as vulnerable for shots between our legs. Even if the striker tries to dribble us, we can still use especially this leg to try and block the dribble. So the fourth technique is the wait and react technique. This is the technique that we'll be using most of the time. What we don't want as goalkeepers is to force these one-on-one situations, especially if we're not able to collect the ball. Most of the time we want to be standing in our goal and react to the situation and see what happens. The wait and react technique is most effective towards long-range one-on-one situations, especially during situations from the side where the goal is already so small. It's a really narrow angle. We don't want to just go out against the striker, stand in the middle of nowhere, and he can just pass the ball to another player who can shoot it into an empty net. We want to trust our position, trust our training, trust our reaction, and just wait and see what the striker does, because this is not really a big chance. And if the striker comes closer, obviously we want to go out with force and try to either block the ball or to collect it with a smother save. So that concludes our video today. I hope you learned a lot about one-on-one techniques, how to perform them and when to use them. Does this mean that you'll save every one-on-one situation from now on to the rest of your career? Obviously not. Does this mean that you can't save the ball if you use the block save in center of the goal? Of course not. But these are based on my experience as a goalkeeper for almost 20 years on an elite level. You find what works for you and you take my advice and my tips to make you an even better goalkeeper. If you got any value from this video, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I promise you that we'll bring you a lot more great goalkeeping tips to make you a better goalkeeper.